Hello, this is Andy Payne, and welcome to my video abstract for BMI 5740. So to start off, we're going to talk about data collection. And really, there are two main sources of where you can get data in an informatic research project. The first way to get data is from clinical trials, and there are some advantages to clinical trials. First, usually the study is prospective. It's heavily regulated, and usually the data is organized. The other source of data could also be epidemiological studies, and usually in these studies, the studies are done retrospectively. The data is unstructured and can also come from multiple disorganized sources. So moving on, now that we've talked about where we collect the data, we have to talk about how we actually record the data. And there are two terms that I'm going to bring up. The first one is source document. Source document is essentially where the data is first being collected. Some examples in studies could be the medical records, surveys, study worksheets. Basically, this is our raw data, and we want to get this source document to eventually transform into an analytic data set. So this ties into our next segment, which is data management, which is essentially how do we do this transformation. Another thing that we have to keep in mind is that since we're in the field of informatics, this data set has to be converted electronically in order for us to perform analysis on it. So this brings up our next topic, which is data management, which is essentially the process of how the source document becomes an analytic data set. And you have to imagine, from an informatics perspective, we have to figure out when our data is in electronic form. And if we captured the data electronically at the beginning, there will be a lot less errors that could occur in trying to transform whatever form data that we had into an electric form. And so this brings up one specific application from informatics that we can apply to research, which is electronic data capture. And by capturing the data electronically, we give ourselves some benefits. One is that we can establish some form of error checking. Two, we can easily import our data into other platforms if it's already electronic. And three, we can create an audit trail and basically capture whenever our data changes, who changes it, and when it changes. This brings us to our last segment of the video, which is data analysis. And the first step of data analysis is de-identification. So the data that we collect actually belong to people, and therefore it could be traced back to the actual people, and this data could be used for harmful measures. So three different ways we can approach the identification informatically is the K-map method, the K-anomaly method, and the K-unlinkability method. And for data analysis, we have to pick a platform to use our data with, and in this video, one specific platform I'll be talking about is I2B2. So finally, I'll discuss what we can actually do analyzing this data. And with I2B2, we can perform queries. So one important thing that comes up a lot in research projects is finding participants for a study, and I2B2 can query the data and basically find out who's available. And this is important because you can do this before a study actually begins to find out if there's actually enough people for this study. And lastly, we can perform statistical analysis on our data. And to do this, I2B2 has these things called cells, which are basically just software modules that connect some form of software to I2B2. And just one example is the statistical language known as R. So with these cells, you can actually use R to perform any statistical analysis or tests that you want to do on the data. So finally, to end this presentation, I just want to mention that even though I talked about many informatic techniques and ways to approach research, the people collecting the data, the people responsible for managing the data, and the people actually analyzing the data don't have to come from an informatics background.